takes people a minute or two to get logged in and get settled in. So I know it's right at 1 o'clock now. But as people are joining us, we welcome you to open up your chat and open up your Q&A and get ready for a nice interactive session. So we're glad to see a whole bunch of folks signing in. Oh, hey, we got somebody from St. Louis. Wonderful, wonderful. Some neighbors, and I'm sure people from Indiana as well.
Yeah, and Amani, thank you. You said thank you for the webinar. We haven't even delivered anything yet, so thanks so much. That's great. So, and hello, Amani, you're in Saudi Arabia. Oh, how nice.
Awesome, and we've got York, Pennsylvania as well. Pennsylvania, a critical state. All the states are critical, but this year Pennsylvania is getting a lot of attention.
Well, I heard a journalist, David, say something which was really quite amusing. They were talking about how Pennsylvania has always been foundational to the presidential election. And of course, this woman is from Pennsylvania. She said, yes, it's Keystone. And so I thought, there you go, slip in that state motto.
There you go, a little state motto pun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, it looks like we've got coming up on 50 people here, which is wonderful. And we're about a minute past. Marianne, should we start moving into it?
Yeah, I think so. Let's go ahead. So do you want to go ahead, David, and introduce yourself first, and then we'll say words?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name's David Rowan. I'm a psychologist by training and a consultant at Psychological Associates. I've been with Psychological Associates for about 4 years, and I'm a people expert. I do all kinds of consulting around talent issues, everything from selection to development to succession planning. So it's great to see everybody here today. Marianne, how about you?
Yeah, thank you, David. Marianne Whelchel. I'm based in the greater Indianapolis, Indiana area. I have, right now I'm working as a consultant for my own company, the Delta Learning Group, but in the past have spent my career in human resources, training and development, and most recently leadership development, working primarily in Fortune 200 companies. I have partnered with Psychological Associates for the better part of 2 decades because their work is just fantastic and cutting edge. And so we decided to put this idea together, and no better partner than Psychological Associates.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that, Marianne. We always love working with you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So everyone, we'd like to just do a quick technology check just to make sure, we, many of us are using Zoom every hour of the day, but just want to make sure that you're fully aware. We will have the audio muted, so you will not be able to directly ask us questions. So we invite you instead to use the chat feature because we'll be checking that routinely. And just a second reminder about the chat, make sure please that you select that your message goes to everyone, not just the panelists. And that way, other participants might see your question or comment. It might trigger something that they wanted to say. So we invite you to go ahead and do that. David and I are going to make every effort to respond to each of the comments and answer your questions as our time allows. If for some reason we don't happen to get to everything, we are committed to answering your questions, and we will do that via email. So you can, just to make sure that if you've got something you want to make sure that you send us an email so that we in fact can respond to that. And so then let's just do a quick technology check. Some of you have already done this, but for those of you that haven't, we'd like you to open up a chat and send us your name. And if you choose to do so, your company name and your location. So again, we're just going to check and make sure that Zoom is working the way that we anticipate for this session. Oh, hi, Catherine from Atlanta, another key state in our presidential election. Of course, what state isn't key? But it is
Another
Oh
key
gosh, it's
state.
lovely to see so many people from all over here.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. We've got St. Louis, we've got the Midwest, we've got the East Coast, we've got a little bit of everything. Uh,
And Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Oh,
yeah, and
Galveston, Texas. Nice. I like that.
we have international. Yeah, no, this is
Mhm.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And just to make sure, Marianne, and so I believe I'm sharing the deck. Is everybody able to see the deck? Can we kind of just check and get a shout out from the chat that the deck is up and working?
It is from my end, David.
All
So,
right,
yeah,
deck is
I'm
up
getting
and
a
working.
lot of,
Great. Thanks for that tech check, everybody.
yeah, a lot of yes. All right. So that allows us to just then move into our content. And again, thank you. We appreciate the diversity of audience that we have today. And my guess is that your questions and comments may be a little bit different depending on where you are located. So that was one of the reasons why we wanted you to include your location. So thanks again, everybody, for doing that. David, do you want to chat a little bit about our agenda?
Yeah, so we're going to cover two things today. First of all, retention is so critical, and folks want to know, how can I have a highly effective retention conversation? So we're going to cover that territory, the business case for the importance of it. Sometimes people call these stay interviews. We're going to be talking about it as a retention conversation. And then secondly, so we know it's important, and we're going to, cover why it's so important. But then the real question is, how do you do it? So we've got our why do it, and a little bit of what, and then our how do I actually go about having a great retention conversation. And then we'll end with giving you some specific tools and skills, those questions you can ask that help the other person think hard and realize their own reasons for staying with you, with their role, with the company when you need them most.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, David. Um, when David and I were chatting about this, of course, I think, we looked at all the economic indicators that are coming out from Washington, D.C. and other places. And, it does appear, of course, that the number of jobs has shrunk, that the number of people seeking unemployment is increasing and so forth. But on the converse, I have heard stories from different people about the challenges of holding on to top performers. And so I'd like to share a couple of those with you. And then David and I are going to talk a little bit about the business environment as well as those psychological stressors. I had a conversation with a young man named Zach. And I have known Zach for probably 10 years. I met him. He was actually one of my son's roommates in college. And so that's when I met him. He has a master's degree in mechanical engineering. And I actually tried to recruit him for the company I was working with at the time. But Zach wanted to go and work for his dream company. And so, in typical Zach fashion, got a really nice offer at that dream company, moved out west and started work there. He was very successful at the dream company, worked there for about 3 years. Then he decided he wanted to move into a leadership role and didn't think that that was going to be available quickly enough at the dream company. So he moved to another organization where he continued to perform well and, in fact, did advance to that leadership role. Then this summer, I got a text message from Zach, just a little catch-up message saying, "Hey, just wanted to let you know that I have decided to move to a new company." And it just kind of took me off guard for just a bit, because I thought, in spite of all this economic news that we're seeing in the media, that there are still challenges that companies face of holding on to really good people like Zach. So two companies have lost him now, and he's having the time of his life at this new third company. So retention of top talent, I think, continues to plague us along with some of the other challenges. About a month ago, I had a similar conversation, this time not from the employee perspective, but rather from the employer perspective. I was chatting with the CEO of a small company here in the Indianapolis area that manufactures and does sales and service for pool tables and other family recreation items. And the CEO was extremely concerned about the retention of two primary groups of employees, his sales staff and the technicians who go to people's homes and work on the family recreation items. He said it's the market for this type of talent is very, very strong, and people have a lot of challenges. Employers have a lot of challenges really trying to hold on to those who are really, really performing well. So he also was struggling. So I think our little imagery there on the second bullet, a roller coaster, we're seeing those roller coaster effects in the economy, the volatility, the uncertainty, the amount of change, and the ambiguity. Many of you might be seeing that also in your respective businesses. Nonetheless, it all points to the fact that the market for top talent is pretty hot. And so therefore, high performing employees may be willing to take that particular chance and change companies even in the most challenging of times. I know, David, there are probably some factors that you've thought about too that also contribute to the willingness of these top employees to consider leaving a good position and maybe step out for something a little bit different. What are your thoughts on that?
Marianne, we all know from our lived experience that 2020 has been one of the most challenging years, perhaps one of the most challenging years of our lives. And stress levels, by some indicators, are at an all-time high. According to the American Psychological Association and a Harris poll that they conducted, general stress levels are higher now than they were back in 2008, 2009, the last time they hit record highs. And that, of course, was during a great economic upheaval. Economic uncertainty causes people to feel unstable. Instability causes many people to seek safety. Some of your top people might start looking for opportunities at other companies if they believe they're going to feel more stable and more safe in that alternative environment or in that role. And this can happen just when you need them most of all, right? I mean, right now we know we need our most important people more than ever today. So we know that you want to have high quality retention conversations or stay interviews. And the question is, how can we do that? So, yeah,
Absolutely,
Marianne.
absolutely, David. Um, Today we are committed to exploring how those retention conversations are one of your key tools that leaders at any level in an organization can use to hold on to those valued employees like Zach and the sales and service people at the pool table manufacturer that I visited with. But first, we'd like to give you an opportunity to listen in on one of those conversations, and there's just a little bit of a twist to it. I'll share right up front with you that this is not a very good example. So what your task is to reflect on what you're hearing and then use the chat feature to share a word or a phrase with us about the conversation and its impact on the employee. That's what we're looking for, is how does this in fact impact the employee?
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll stop sharing the deck so that Marianne and I can have a little bit of fun with you all and let you watch our role play.
Yeah, all right. First of all, let me just give a quick background to kind of set this up correctly. So this is in the IT function of an organization. My manager, a woman named Naomi, has participated in a number of HR initiatives, the latest of which is obviously retention of key talent. In addition to identifying and assessing key talent, one of the strategies identified by the Retention Task Force is to increase the number and the quality of conversations with key talent. Since IT is one of the target functions for this initiative, Naomi has asked her managers, including me, I'm one of her managers, to begin conversations with their direct reports. She wants us to start with our key talent and then work on down to include all direct reports. I also want to mention that since we're in the midst of a pandemic, this conversation is occurring across the instant messaging function that this particular company uses. So kind of what today is like. So anyway, again, your challenge is to listen and give us a word or a phrase that you believe describes the conversation. If you're familiar with the dimensional model and you can pinpoint what quadrant I, as the manager, am operating from, go ahead and put that in as well. Okay, so David, you ready to begin?
I'm going into my instant messaging mode, so I'll talk my thoughts, as it were.
Me too. All right. Hey, David, everything okay today?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm working on the post-analysis report for the server downtime issue we had last week.
Great. That is a big problem that's recurring for us, and we've got to get to the bottom of it fast. You know, I need a second to chat about something else, though.
Okay, what's up?
Well, you know, I'm sure you've heard that Naomi's been involved in the latest HR project, retention. Side comment here, doesn't HR have anything else to do? I could offer up about 10 real problems they could tackle, but of course they never come to me on the front line to ask. Now, do they? No. Okay, enough venting for today. Let me get to it. Anyway, Naomi has asked all her managers to touch base with our direct reports to check in with you on this so-called retention issue. Sorry, more venting. You would think that HR would realize we have critical things to do around here, like server downtime. But I'm not going to cross Naomi or HR. I'll do my due diligence and I'll have the conversation. So here we go, retention. You're hanging with us, right, David? I mean, you've gotten a chance to work on key projects, even connecting with our CTO in the For What It's Worth department. You know, for a guy who's only been here less than 5 years, I think, that's more than what someone with my talents was able to do. I guess I should be jealous, huh? Well, anyway, let's forget that. Now, let's not forget, though, about the opportunity I gave you last year to travel to India to work with our offshore partner, QPC. You talked about how much you enjoyed getting immersed in the Indian culture, as well as doing some sightseeing in New Delhi. You know, I should have probably taken that trip myself, but I thought you could handle it okay, which of course you did with, you know, a little boost from me. So back to the question. You're not thinking about going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, I have enjoyed my project work, and it was great to have the chance to go to hear more about IT strategy from the CTO. I did enjoy the project involving him, and you're right, it was fun to go to India. There are some things that I have a concern about,
Hey,
though,
great,
and
David. I'm pretty sure I knew where you stood. Look, I've got to run. I'm going to catch you soon. Listen, call or text me once you get the info we need to propose that solution for the server downtime issue. Hey, have a great afternoon. Take care.
okay.
All right. Let's see. Oh, I love this. Snarky, sarcastic, and narcissistic. That's wonderful. I love it. David, there's a few little themes that were coming through on our chat. Totally out of touch with her direct report. She made it all about herself. Of course I did. Self-centered, too much talking, not enough listening. Jessica, can we go up a little bit on the chat? I don't know if I can move that or not. I'm going to try to see what else we've got. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, some of the first comments that came in
Yes.
were the venting is ineffective, lack of professionalism. what a monologuer, right? Or what a monologue. Yeah, and that it's not really engaging with the direct report. Now, of course, we created a bit of an exaggerated scenario, but I'm sure you've all been in those moments, in those situations where you kind of think the other person just isn't listening to you at all. I mean, Marianne, I'm sure you've had those moments, right?
I have, and there's just a couple of comments in here that caught my attention.
Yeah,
But that kind of conversation seems very disingenuous and less than honest. And of course, this whole thing around interruption, not really giving the other party a good chance to really answer the question: Are you thinking about leaving or not? So yes, and I think as Amani pointed out, it really reflects the focus on me, self-centeredness. Oh, distant, low EQ. Those of you that are not maybe familiar with that acronym, emotional intelligence or emotional quotient. So I think that's a really good one as well.
yeah, that's a powerful point. And so we absolutely saw the themes of it felt like they were going through the motions. It felt stiff. It felt disingenuous. And someone actually said, "I've actually had I've seen conversations like that. It may have seemed like it was a little bit of an exaggeration, but no, that I've actually seen that happen. So it can be that ineffective."
Yeah, it's so painful. And as David and I work our way throughout the rest of the webinar, we're going to offer you some ideas and tips to maybe counter some of those concerns that people raised about this conversation. So
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at a leadership model that can help us make sense of and understand some of the behaviors that we just saw. So, for those of you who are familiar with psychological associates, you may be familiar with our dimensional model of leadership behavior. And the model is really at the heart of everything we do at PA. But for those of you who are joining us who've never seen it before, never worked with us, I'm going to give you a quick overview and then a quick refresher for the folks who've seen it before. Now, the model is based on two axes or two continuum. And we have the vertical line, which represents the task continuum. And the higher you go on the task continuum, the more your behaviors are proactive and oriented towards making things happen. The lower you go, the more your behaviors are reactive and letting things happen. The next is the horizontal axis. Uh, This is what we call the people continuum or the people axis. The farther to the left you go, the more your behaviors show a lower regard for others. The higher to the right you go, the more they show a high regard for others. So that makes four quadrants. In the upper left hand, we have the Q1 quadrant or Q1 behaviors. This style of leadership is a mix of that getting things done, but not showing regard for people. And so we call that a tell and do or command and control style of leadership. Down here in the lower left hand, we see behaviors that are avoidant and passive, as well as not showing high regard for others. Over here in the Q3 quadrant, we see behaviors which favor socializing and avoiding conflict. And so we see pacify and socialize leadership behaviors. Now, finally, up in the upper right-hand corner, and of course it's in gold because these are the behaviors we're trying to encourage in leaders. That's a leader who proactively balances making things happen with treating others with high regard and high respect. They engage, they collaborate, they challenge, they're assertive, and they gain true commitment. Now, I want to emphasize that this is a behavioral model. All of us have exhibited each of these types of behaviors, Q1, Q2, Q3, or Q4, at different times, maybe even on the same day. I know I've had good days and bad days, and I've had days where I've exhibited all of these behaviors. So something to think about is, why could that be? Well, it's because motivators play a large role in driving the behaviors we exhibit. So let's take a moment to talk about motivators. Psychologists organize motivators into two broad categories. The first are external to the person. We call these tangible benefits. We see every day that people's behaviors change because of external, tangible benefits. Simplest example, think about a Monday morning in February. It's cold, it's raining, it's gray, the leaves have fallen off the trees, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, that's how it is. And do you really want to get up and get out of bed and go to work? You don't. But you know what you know? There's a paycheck waiting for you at the end of the week. You've got that external, tangible benefit. So you get up and you go to it and you do your job. While these motivators are powerful, they have limitations. As leaders, we have limited resources. We can't just increase salaries or give bonuses willy-nilly whenever we want to, or to try and get a little boost out of people for a particular project. And while a bonus can boost morale and effort in the short term, you have to be very careful with extrinsic motivators. We've all experienced this in our lives, I'm sure. Think about if you ever had a toddler around the house and you started to reward them for certain behaviors with a candy or a treat or something. Next thing you know, they want a candy or a treat for anything they do. So you have to be careful that external motivators uh, maybe people are going to start to expect a bonus and expect an external something for everything they do. Now, luckily, the good news is there are also another category of motivators, and we call these intangible benefits or intrinsic. And this is about when you're doing a behavior that is in line with maybe underlying values you have or needs you have, you get a certain feeling from doing it. You feel like a need is met, and that can be highly motivating. And of course, as managers and leaders, it's not about benefits, right? It's about, or about bonuses, I should say. It's about linking with those intangible benefits that motivate people's behaviors. So, for example, it's autumn. And again, in the Northern Hemisphere, leaves are falling. This weekend, like a lot of people, I was out raking my yard. And you know what? I looked over to my neighbor's yard. They weren't out raking. But I said to myself, hey, I'm going to be a good neighbor. I'm going to rake a little corner of their yard, the part of the lawn that you kind of is indistinguishable. You can't tell where the line is between our property. And I didn't get paid to do it, but I kind of felt good doing it, actually. I was outside doing something nice for a neighbor, and I got a little intrinsic boost for being a nice guy. And it just felt good to do it. So think about yourself. Think about all the things you do where you go above and beyond at your company. Maybe it's for your boss, maybe it's for a peer, maybe it's for a direct report, where there's an intangible benefit that you get. You don't get paid more, but you feel good doing it, or it meets a certain intrinsic need you have. That's something that we can all kind of understand intuitively, and it happens every day. So next, we want to check in with you and have you think about this concept of motivation, particularly focusing on those intangible benefits that I was just reviewing. Marianne.
Yeah, so as David said, we're all motivated by different things. He used the raking example, and just wanted to be kind to a neighbor. There could have been other reasons why he might have wanted to help out the neighbor a little bit. So that's what we're going to explore is, what are the different things that drive top work in people? So as you are listening to us, what I want you to do is to think about one of your top performers. Just get that name in your head. You're not going to have to share the name, so we're not going to violate anybody's privacy. But what I do want you to think about is, what is it, the one thing that seems to be a predominant driver for him or her that results in that top work the person can produce? And so in the chat feature, again, we'd like you to share a word or phrase that describes what you believe really triggers that top performance. What is the motivator? While David's going to continue a little bit and talk in a little bit more detail about motivation. And David, I'm going to keep my eye on the chat, and we'll kind of comment as things go.
Great, great. I already saw it started to roll and saw
Uh-huh.
some really interesting things in there. So great. Thank you, everyone. Keep those comments coming in the chat. So Not only did Doctors Lefton and Bezada, who were the founders of Psychological Associates and the creators of the model, not only did they create the model, they also had a remarkable insight. They realized that you could map motivators onto the model. And when you do this, you have a tool for understanding what are the behaviors you see every day. So look over here at Q1 behaviors. The underlying intrinsic or intangible motivators here are independence and esteem. In other words, there's a need to be recognized for work that they've done and a need to have some independent control over their work area. So when you see someone using Q1 behaviors, you can kind of think, oh, there's something driving that, for them. Now down here in the Q2 behaviors, we see these intrinsic needs or these intangible needs of security and stability. So when you see those Q2 behaviors of maybe avoidance or abdicating, making strong decisions, you say, oh, the person, maybe they're seeking security, maybe they're seeking stability. Over here in the Q3 area, we often see needs for social connection and belongingness and social harmony. They don't want to be on the outside of the social group. They want to be on the inside of the social group. We've all felt that need for social connection. Perhaps actually these days, with all of our Zoom meetings and our social distancing, maybe we're all feeling a lot more need for social belongingness and social connection. But when you see Q3 behaviors, you can think, aha, I think what could be driving that is that need for belongingness and social connection. Now, finally, we look up here to Q4 behaviors, and we see a lot of Q4 behaviors from those high performers we've been talking about, those real top talents. And those Q4 behaviors are often motivated by a need for what Maslow called self-realization, sometimes it's called self-actualization, and interdependence is what that should read. I'm sorry, Marianne, that's on me. I was going to update that slide, but this could be the lucky mistake that sticks something in everyone's memory.
That's
Instead of it
right.
saying independence, it should say interdependence. And what we mean by that is it's not about me, it's about we. That there is a underlying need or desire to ensure that everyone wins, that the rising tide lifts all boats. It's a way of thinking, not me first, but the whole team, the whole organization, the entire company gets value, gets accomplishes missions, accomplishes the vision, and moves forward together as a unit. And so those are some of those intrinsic or intangible benefits that are driving those Q4 behaviors. And now that we've got a better understanding of how to think about people's behaviors and these top talents, let's look at another tool that can help. Well, actually, before we look at the other tool, Marianne, I'm going to invite you. What kind of things did you see in the chat?
Yeah, I was just recording some ideas
Yeah.
as you were talking, David, that popped up through the chat. And it was interesting to go back to your slide on tangible benefits.
Hmm.
Someone did say that there were shared a couple of things that I would consider to be very tangible benefits.
Hmm.
The avoidance of hunger,
Hmm.
avoidance of things like homelessness,
Hmm.
and that's so the physical security and care for our well-being. Those are certainly tangible benefits and oftentimes will be motivators for people.
Hmm.
We've seen some great movies, in fact, about how people get motivated to really save their families, save themselves, or whatever. And I always think about the tangible benefits. Other people mentioned the more intangible benefits. So, David, if you put the model back up, I'd like to talk and share with you what I saw coming through the chat. So, there were several people that mentioned, this notion of achievement and accomplishing something, and there was someone who mentioned getting recognition from the top leadership.
Hmm.
Some of those things could fall into Q1
Hmm.
behavior. Sometimes there's somebody on what I would call overdrive, very enthusiastic about getting work done. And the reason they want to get that work done is because they want to show off their technical expertise, or they want to be recognized as the leading expert in this particular field. And so that's what drives them. And certainly getting recognition from the top, if that's your primary motivator. And David, you and I have met people like that. If in fact that's a motivator, I think we'd probably describe that as Q1 behavior. Your thoughts, David, on that?
Yeah, there's an interesting phenomenon, and we've all seen this before, and that is
Mhm.
that there are some folks who use some Q1 behaviors at times, there's an opportunity for them to get a little bit of success in the short term. I mean, who hasn't seen a manager or leader use a bit of a command and control style that's maybe driven by a desire for mastery or, like you said, recognition from the highest levels of the organization? But
Mhm.
we caution against thinking that a Q1 style is the optimal style to use. Because, think about what happens when you're using a Q1 style of behavior as a leader. Are you really giving those around you the opportunity to learn and grow? Are you developing their talents and skills as much as possible? Are you coaching and mentoring? Are you in it for them? And so, you think about leadership that has longevity, leadership that lasts, leadership that makes everyone around you better. Uh, that style of leadership, I think, is the one that we're hoping to encourage and instill in others, and that we talk a lot about with folks that we do consultation and with, that we teach in our classes. And that's that Q4 style, which is about making everyone around you better. It's really a win-win kind of mindset.
Right. David, there was a Q2 comment, I think. There wasn't a lot of information around this, but the word that came through was trust. And sometimes Q2 behavior is a little bit of an insecure behavior. They're looking for a sense of predictability, low risk in their life, including their work life. And so, again, feeling like if I do something, they're going to trust me and everything is going to be all right. There's not going to be any upheaval or anything like that. Sometimes those are the motivators for Q2. Would you agree?
That sounds exactly right. And I think one thing we want to do is we want to be very cautious, and we don't want to what I call demonize any of the cue behaviors.
Mhm.
All of us have periods of time in our lives, or even just days, like I was saying earlier, where maybe we do feel a little driven by some of these motivators, and we exhibit some Q1, Q2, or Q3 behaviors. And it's not evil to exhibit those behaviors here and there. And those motivators are very real. They're very
Mhm.
real. I see in the chat, again, as you were saying, there was a theme of tangible benefits and how they motivate us. And certainly, if we have tangible needs for our family, to care for the people around us, those are strong motivators. And certainly, we all feel a need for security at times. And so we may be tempted to use some Q2 behaviors. And it can happen. It absolutely can happen.
Yeah, David, moving on to just a quick comment about Q3, you mentioned this in relationship to Q4
Mhm.
about, helping everyone succeed, and, making others realize achievement. And there was a comment in the chat about helping others shine, which really can kind of go both ways. It can, in fact, be a reflection of Q4 behavior, or I could see it being a Q3 motivator as well, because I'm going to help everybody else succeed in order to increase their acceptance of me, in order to promote harmony in the work group. I may have to sacrifice some of my own accomplishments or my ability to deliver, but boy, I'm going to make everybody look good around here. Your thoughts on that, David?
Marianne, that's a really interesting perspective, and I think it is a cautionary tale for leaders.
Sure.
Certainly, we want to lift up the people who we are leading, the people on our teams. We want their accomplishments to be seen, known, recognized, and rewarded. Um, But if we are so self-sacrificing that we don't embrace our own accomplishments and allow for our own advancement, if you will, or the recognition of the contributions we made, we can end up undermining ourselves, or not undermining in an active sense, but not showing what we often talk about with leadership, which is a boldness, a courage, an ability to say, I take responsibility for this. It was my decision that led to that outcome. And I do think that there is a certain boldness or courage that I would describe as a Q4 behavior, and that is often looked for in folks rising into, upper echelons of leadership, where you want to be genuine. Yes, I did it. It was my responsibility. I take credit when it was good, and I take responsibility if it didn't work. Right. And I'm not going to put it off on anybody else. So, Marianne, I think well said. There's an interesting question here at the end that we could just
Yeah,
address real
that's what I
quick.
thought we'd
Yeah.
use to kind of wrap up this little section here.
Yeah.
How about looking at it, the question, how about if looking for a regard toward my own achievements from myself, what kind of Q style is that? Great question.
Yeah.
And I could see it going a couple of different ways, David. So I think I'll describe the Q1 way, and then maybe you can describe what I think you would say would be the Q4 way as well.
Yeah.
So, sometimes we are driven to accomplish, we are driven to achieve for reasons that are strictly personal. It's all about me. I want to be recognized as the person who knows everything on this topic. I want senior leadership to know that I'm the one that did this or whatever. So if those are the drivers that push us to do our best work, then I would probably classify that behavior as belonging in Q1, because I can make things happen, but I am going to do it primarily with a sole central focus on me, a very low regard for other people. So again, if that's the way the behavior looks like, I'd probably call it Q1.
Yeah.
But David, we could also call it Q4.
Yeah. Well, and Marianne, you've done a great job of describing the me element of what drives some Q1 and honestly some Q2 behaviors, which is the thought process behind it is, how will I benefit? What will I gain? How will it improve my station in the company? How will it improve my career? The bottom line for me. But thinking differently though. Imagine the person who is not just thinking about themselves. Imagine the person who is thinking about their whole team, thinking about the mission of the organization, thinking about the vision that the executives want to execute on, where we all want to go together as a group. And if that's what's in your mind, if it's, yes, all of us together accomplishing, moving forward, getting better, making gains, then I would say it's a Q4 behavior, because what's behind it is a we ethic and a we succeed together and a win-win thought process.
Thanks, David. So Amani, I guess the bottom line in response to your question is that it depends. There's probably more information, to kind of look at and investigate in terms of how that behavior really is observed and seen by others, that before you can make a judgment about whether it's Q1 or Q4. So, but thanks for the question. It was a great discussion. David, let's go ahead and move on and talk. We promised our participants that we would take a look at a tool that can help them for the retention conversation. And again, for those of you that may have some familiarity with the products from Psychological Associates, you'll recognize this as the 5-step format. For those of you that are not as familiar, I'd like to just do a quick review of the 5-step format so that you get a sense for how specifically a retention conversation might go. I will offer a side note, though, to say that this format can be used for many, many different types of conversations. I've personally had lots of different types. But it works very well for the purposes that we're talking about today, how to hold on to that great direct report. And one of the other things that I do want to mention about this, because sometimes when people are introduced to a model, they're like, oh my gosh, I have to follow it step one, step two. I'll never remember that. It's too hard. You know, this is presented as a way to organize your thoughts and make sure that you're really being very inclusive of your whoever you're conversing with, your direct report, your manager, or whatever. And time will show us from a learning and development perspective, the more that you use this, the less you will begin thinking about, oh, what's the next step? What am I supposed to do? It will become what I call a mental model for you. So it really speaks to that old adage of practice makes perfect. So if in fact we practice it like we would practice any skill, maybe it's, my little granddaughter is enamored with American Ninja Warrior and just is convinced that she's going to be able to climb and do all the things that they do. And so we have to do a little practice every day. But that's the notion, is that if we practice on something, we're going to get better at it. So let's start out by taking a quick look at step one, creating a productive climate. And creating a productive climate, really, I feel are probably two parts to this. There's the physical part of the climate, and there's the mental part of the climate. When you're having a retention conversation, probably the last thing you want to choose to do is have that conversation over instant message like I did. That is not exactly a medium which produces great two-way conversations. So, I think you have to really give serious thought to, what's the topic and where is the other person going to be most comfortable for this conversation, and what time of day should I have it? What day of the week should I have it? Because all of those, I think, really play into something that we speak to a lot in step one, and that's receptivity. So we obviously want to really increase and enhance the receptivity of the other person, so they'll be with us throughout the whole conversation. Just a side note, I will tell you that I once had a conversation with someone in a Starbucks. Normally, I would not have that kind of conversation in Starbucks, but when I scheduled the meeting, my direct report just came to me. She goes, I just don't want to have it here. Can we have it in another place? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And then she said, okay, we're going to Starbucks. And I'm like, okay. I later found out that she had worked at Starbucks during her college years, and she had a great comfort level with just how Starbucks is organized, and everybody's doing their business, but everybody's minding their own stuff. So it was just an interesting way to think about it. But you really, in step one, need to introduce the topic, provide a reason for people to engage with you. We call that, a benefit, and make sure that people understand, that it's really a good thing for them to participate, do a receptivity check with them. Step two, I think, is probably the most challenging, David, for many of us, because most of us like to talk a lot more than we like to listen. And so you'll notice it says obtain the direct report's views. So step two is really designed for people to really think about, how can I get as much information, not in an interrogative fashion, I'll get that word out, but in a way that is natural, in a way that's comfortable, in a way that encourages the direct report to talk. And we'll spend a little bit of time looking at that in just a few minutes, but it's really a step where you need to focus on just asking questions, not offering your comments, not offering your viewpoints. And last but not least, don't offer your solutions or suggestions for improvement, because then that will stop the conversation and receptivity will go down. Step three, that's your opportunity to add your views. Again, we never like to see step three be long and drawn out. It's a quick summation of what you have thought about and what your perspective is on the topic. I like to say that if you have more than 3 things to say in step 3, you probably need multiple meetings. So, try to limit the amount of information that you are sharing with your direct report. Step 4, clarify and manage differences. There are occasions where the direct report will not see eye to eye with you and vice versa. And you must explore those. You can't close your eyes and hope they go away, be blind to an area of potential conflict. You really do need to address the differences and see if you can work through that. So there are a couple of tools that we'll use a lot in a step 4 part of a conversation, like a summary statement. Oh, if I heard you correctly, you said this and this. Did I get that right? And maybe it was just a matter of you didn't quite pick up every nuance or every point that the direct report was making. Another tool that we can use in step 4 is something called a reflective statement. And a reflective statement really reflects your listening to people's nonverbal behaviors and to their emotions. So maybe you see a flash of anger, or maybe you see someone now becoming very reluctant to talk about something. And so you could, kind of probe that a little bit by saying, gosh, David, you seem really upset about what I just said. And then I'm quiet. I'm going to let David come back to me and say, well, yeah, I am. Or no, I just was thinking about something else, whatever the case may be. And last but not least, for our 5-step format, we have step 5, which is really our closing for the conversation. So again, the closing doesn't have to be up, we're going to get this all wrapped up and tied up neatly and we'll never have to talk about it again. It may be, we need to set up another meeting to explore some more, or maybe we can reach partial agreement and move forward on part A, but we need to come back and revisit part B. But it offers some sense of closure. One other point before I'm going to chat a little bit more is that this really should be driven by the direct report. If you start handing out action steps and plans to your direct reports, they're going to feel like they're probably dominated by you, and they probably will follow along because you're the manager, you have the authority. But so I guess bottom line, in the short term, you might get the results you want, but maybe not so much in the long term. David, let's go and take a look at our next slide, and I really want to focus on step 2. So we talked about step 2 as being the step where you are in an inquisitive mode. You're really exhibiting appreciative inquiry and asking what that performer is thinking about and so forth. So sometimes it's very difficult for leaders to think about a good question to ask. So that's what we want you to do, is go back to that person that was on your mind a little earlier when we asked you about motivation, and then think about what questions you might ask him or her in a retention conversation in step 2. And then if you'll just pop that in the chat with us as we move forward, we're going to share those as we go. So David, let's take a look at the next slide, and then we'll come back to the chat. You'll see that we've kind of devised this slide as, sort of funnel-like. If you think about, we start very broadly with the organization. There are a couple of questions we might ask in a retention conversation. We get a little bit more of a narrowed focus to the person's role and the team. And then last but not least, you'll see that there are some questions about you as a leader. And it's kind of tough, I think, for a lot of leaders to ask these questions, because it does take a sense of personal courage from each of us to ask people to provide feedback and commentary on our leadership. A couple other things that you'll notice about these questions. You'll notice that they're not questions that can necessarily be answered with 1 or 2 words, so they're open-ended. That's going to get you a lot of information, but it is a challenge. You have to kind of practice really getting that. The other thing in step 2 that we didn't really talk too much about, but I'd like to mention it here, and that's how important it is to pause, because as people are talking, we really want to listen to them. And so there's nothing worse than having a leader ask like 5 questions in a row, and then the direct report is sitting there thinking, what question should I respond to? So anyway, David, I'm going to take a quick look at the chat, and because I've been seeing some good ones come through, I'm going to work my way up from the bottom.
Yeah.
Do you feel you're challenged by your work and supported by us to help you achieve your goals? Really nice concept there, don't you think, David?
Mhm. Absolutely. And, we're looking at all of this through the lens of the model. And so
Mhm.
we're thinking both about using Q4 behaviors ourselves, which means we're thinking about the other person in a compassionate and empathetic way, right? Really using that EQ muscle that was mentioned earlier. And so we're really trying to put ourselves in their shoes. So these questions are framed up in that way. It's kind of, yeah, what would I want if I was in their role? And what are the kinds of things I want to get them thinking about? So they can see that I am really trying to see it from their perspective and get a win for them. And then it's interesting also to kind of add into that all the motivational factors we talked about, Marianne. If you've
Mhm.
got this great high performer and you imagine some of the drivers for them, right? It's the self-actualization and interdependence and it's framing up questions that can bring out those things into the discussion. So yeah,
Yeah, I
so
think
go
Debbie
ahead.
has hit right on that, David. So then
Yeah.
what do you think about your work? So that's really, it seems very simple, but it's a really, really powerful question.
Yeah.
How can we make the environment more suitable to you? What actions or expectations do you have to align our visions?
Mhm.
All really, really great questions.
Mhm.
Again, I think probably you know, how about this one from Debbie? How do you feel your career goals are aligned with our company's mission and vision? We find that's a lot, oftentimes a very big reason with people leaving is that they don't see the fit between what they want for themselves and the direction the company is going. So
Mhm.
that's a good one as well. Thank you, everybody, for offering those up. It really gave us some good examples. We know you have it in you. My, I guess, last parting comment on questions is to really not just pay attention to the content of the question, but also pay attention to how you phrase it to make sure that it isn't a question that can be answered with yes, no, or maybe so.
Mhm. Yeah, and think for a moment as you're crafting that question from that person's perspective.
Mhm.
What would be on their mind and what would be most interesting to draw out from them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we're
absolutely.
coming to the end of our hour. These
We
hours
are,
always go
David.
so fast, Marianne.
It is. And
Yeah.
before we go, we want to share some resources with
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
So we'll pop these up and see what you think. I know that there are a lot of people who really just love to read. That's their style. And so there are a couple of things book-wise that I thought were particularly helpful. One is a book called A Beautiful Question by Warren Berger. Just really refining the art of asking great questions. I would be absolutely remiss if and I put this one up here, folks, Leadership Through People Skills by Robert Lefton and Victor Bezada. That's the foundational work that much of what Psychological Associates does is based on. I read my first copy of that more than 20 years ago. And I'll tell you, I'm on my third copy because they're falling apart. So, I take them with me when I'm doing individual coaching or delivering a session, because there's always something that somebody asks that I can go to that book and find something out about. For those of you that love to peruse YouTube, you might look at Using Stay Interviews by Meredith Toole. She talks, it's just a quick 2-minute interview and really talks about just some great points about these retention conversations. For those of you that want to go a little bit more in depth on the motivators, there's this employee retention strategy in 2020 on a YouTube channel called Can Indian, which I thought was quite helpful to provide a nice overview of that. David, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about Q4 Edge?
You bet. It's right at 2 o'clock. I'm going to be real brief and then we can all sign off. Thank you all so much for your time with us today. The Q4 Edge is a new solution that we have developed. It's an online learning platform and it offers training in some of the core concepts that we covered today, the model, the 5-step format, and it's highly interactive and people get to actually practice the skills, watch themselves on video, and give and receive feedback. So it's a wonderful tool for leadership training and leadership development. In particular, your new leaders, people recently stepping into those positions, wondering, what are the people skills I need? I have the technical skills, but what about the people skills? That's a great people skills training tool. Please come visit us at our website, reach out to Clay Hildebrand or myself, and we would be happy to provide you with a demo.
Yeah,
And I think
everyone,
that's,
thank you again
about
for
it.
taking time out of your day to join us. We had a lot of fun. And again, if you've got questions for us, please go ahead and send those to q4solutions.com and make sure that we get an answer for you. So thank you, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, take care.